Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's the Jacked Up Review Show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show.
So, we're back with another exclusive here. I'm here with JJ Bruno, the retro geek himself, and we'll be playing a message exclusively from Franco Lee Russell of They Must Be Destroyed on Sight. So I'll let you sum up why Christopher Lee is one of the best of the best.
Okay. Let me just start off by saying I think we all grew up watching him as Dracula,
Accurate, yes.
you know. And that was my generation. Because we got to see him on the Channel 9 or Channel 5 horror movie. Or Chiller Theater or something like that. That's the only way I knew him.
Right.
And then we had, I didn't know much more about his career till about a little later. Noticed he was doing, in Sherlock Holmes, where he played in Hound of the Baskervilles with Peter Cushing.
That is a good one.
The thing that amazes me is all the roles he's taken over time are either surprisingly, they're probably in bad movies, and he's taken them because they need the name in there, or he's been part of an ensemble cast, and he's shot an ensemble cast, but his main claim to fame was doing villains and fiends and dark hair.
Yeah, and I mean, for any of these UK actors, even though he clearly is English, he never really comes off as just in that mold because he kind of doesn't have an accent at the end of his. If that makes sense.
No, he's very cosmopolitan with his style.
I think it's also helped by his commitment to just really toning his voice. He can go for just full blown or more reserved. And he kind of lets them talking. I mean, anyone who wants to, they can YouTube his take on Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven.
Oh yeah,
absolute. Someone might have heard it somewhere along the way, whether it was in a theater class or something.
When he says the line, "Quoth the Raven, evermore," you get that chill up and down your spine. I think I heard that in English class my freshman year when he did it, and my friends were in class with me, and we were like going, "This is cool," So yeah, but Christopher Lee's career has been very, very, not scattered, but very down the pike, workman-like almost. And any role he took, you would, your eyes, it's like that thing, your eyes immediately drift to him, whatever he was doing at that time.
Cameron, how you doing? I'm going to do my best to be fairly brief here because I know you like to sort of build episodes, piece together stuff people send in to you, and so brevity is probably key there. So you can just, edit, and we'll leave it where it lay. We're going to go to Christopher Lee's top 10 film roles, and I imagine a lot of these are going to basically be things that show up on everybody's list that everybody's familiar with, but hopefully I sort of stuck in a couple here that are a little different that some people are not used to. First off, I'm just going to give like 6 honorable mentions here. So first off, Fu Manchu in the Fu Manchu series from 1965 to 69. The movies have not aged well because of the yellow face stuff and the fact that they taped Christopher Lee's eyes, or eyelids, rather, so he looked more Chinese. That kind of stuff is frowned upon, and rightfully so, but given that, if you actually watch the movies, and they get really bad by the end, like the first couple are pretty good, and then you get into the last, I think there's like 5 of them or something like that. The last 3 or so are pretty schlocky, pretty terrible. But Christopher Lee, one thing he always sort of did was kind of bring some authenticity and sort of grounded his roles and brought believability into stuff he did, at least, even in shitty films. So I think his performances in Fu Manchu, given what he had to work with, were pretty good. Next, I'll mention Rochefort in The Three Musketeers and its sequel, The Four Musketeers, from 1973 to 1974, respectively. Here he gets to play like a mustache-twirling villain and has an eye patch, and he's an expert swordsman. And he actually got to display his actual fencing skills in these films, which is kind of cool. Here's one everyone's going to mention, Soramon the White from the Lord of the Rings trilogy from 2001 to 2003. And of course he also appears in the subsequent Hobbit trilogy, and the less said about that, the better. But I think it's pretty good. It's kind of just cashing in on his stoic presence. There's not like a lot of quote-unquote acting here, but I know this was sort of important stuff for him because he wanted to, play great roles from literature, like Dracula, like Soramon the White, and give them justice, do them justice, and he does. So good on him. Moving on, Dracula in Jess Franco's Dracula from 1970. Here he gets to look like Dracula from the actual novel from Bram Stoker, and he gets to say a lot of the lines. The movie itself is hit or miss, but he got to do more Dracula stuff in this movie than that it's actually from the text than he did really in the Hammer series, ironically enough. And they had, 7 films or something in the Hammer series. Next, I'll mention Colonel Charles Bingham from Nothing But the Night, with him and Peter Cushing, who look into the goings-on around several killings, and they seem to be involving these weird children. And I won't give away the mystery if no one's seen that movie from 1973. And I think it's pretty good. It's kind of a sleeper. It's a little slow, but I like the underlying ideas. I think it's kind of creepy. And the last honorable mention will be Stefan Krasko in Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf, or the better title, Howling 2, Sturba, Werewolf Bitch, from 1985. And here Christopher Lee he obviously knew he was on a bullshit movie, so he just has a little fun with it. He wears stupid sunglasses and just sort of hams it up. And you can't really ask more from him in a movie like that, where the primary attraction is Sybil Danning getting naked. Moving on to the top 10. I'll mention Dr. Catheter from Gremlins 2, the new batch from 1990. I put this one in because not only is it a fun, sort of campy little performance, but it also, I think, helped reintroduce him to a lot of people who didn't know who the fuck he was, because his career really did slow down a lot in the 80s. Moving on, Mycroft Holmes in The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes from 1970. He's played Sherlock Holmes as well in several things, but here he got to play Sherlock Holmes' smarter brother. Then we'll move on to Francisco Scaramanga from The Man with the Golden Gun from 1974, one of the better Roger Moore Bonds. Got a lot of psychedelic sort of influences and stuff like that. It's a very fun little movie, and this is one of those Sean Connery things where Christopher Lee, he's supposed to be playing like a half-Cuban assassin or something like that, and nothing about him screams Cuban at all. He's clearly a British man with a golden gun. Moving on, Professor Sir Alexander Saxton from Horror Express from 1972 teamed up with Peter Cushing here again, and just a fun little riff on the alien body swap movie where it's got the mystery, it's the whodunit mystery, and there's an alien jumping from body to body and killing people, literally sucking their brains dry to feast on them. And it's really cool if you haven't seen it. And it's just one of the ones where he gets to play a good guy, which fairly rare for him. He doesn't get to play a lot of good guys, and when he does, he usually excels in the role. Next, I'll mention one of his great physical performances, and this would be Karis from The Mummy. It's the 1959 one from Hammer. Just a really good physical performance. He doesn't get to say really anything as far as I remember, but his tall stature gives him plenty of stuff to work with in that film. Then we'll mention Nicolas Duc de Richelieu in The Devil Rides Out in 1968, again playing a good guy, but although he looks like the typical goateed human representation of Satan almost, but here he plays a sort of occult detective good guy. Also mention Grigory Rasputin in Rasputin the Mad Monk from 1966. He just looks like Rasputin, man. He just brings the character to life on the screen, and it's an interesting film. Then I'll mention The Creature, or Frankenstein's Monster, from The Curse of Frankenstein from 1957, the first Hammer Frankenstein film. Here again, just a great physical performance. Much worth seeking out. And again, he's playing opposite Peter Cushing here. You can't lose. You really can't lose. Second to last here, Lord Summersisle from The Wicker Man from 1973, where he just plays a really against type kind of character here. You got to basically strut his stuff and just be something that's totally unexpected from people who were, big fans of his. They're used to the stoic, slow-talking, evil, oppressive villain, and here he's playing he's still playing somewhat a villain, but definitely a very personable and funny one. Good stuff there, and I think people saw this coming. Dracula in the Hammer Dracula series, but the one I will single out the most, and I think a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this one, but his performance in Taste the Blood of Dracula, where I think he has maybe 3 lines in the whole film. This is around the time in the series where he had had enough of playing Dracula for Hammer. He was tired of the hacky lines they were giving him, and he was refusing to say them. I think what makes this performance so great, though, is not only, again, does he just use his physical presence to act for him here. The couple lines he does say just work. And also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the film that he came back on because they threatened to basically, it threatened to put a bunch of the production people out of work if they didn't make this film. And so instead of being responsible basically for a bunch of people not having jobs, Christopher Lee decided to suck it up and do this film. And of course, he would do a couple more films as well in the series. But yeah, I think just the professionalism here, the ability to, sort of put his pride in the back seat and just do it for the people he's working with and still give a really good performance, I think. He's more of a force of nature. He's more of a metaphor in this one for the hypocrisy of the Victorian age. And I think it's the most interesting of the Hammer Dracula films. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you later.
Hey everybody, co-host Corey here from Podcasting After Dark, here to talk about Christopher Lee. If you don't know who Christopher Lee is, for shame. Not only was he Count Dooku in the Star Wars prequel films, but he played in a fantastic movie that you guys and gals should all check out called Horror Express. And he played a Professor Sir Alexander Saxton, along with Peter Cushing and Telly Savalas in a book based on Who Goes There, which is what The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, was based off of. So Christopher Lee is not just Count Dooku. He's also in Horror Express. He's also Dracula and the old Hammer films as well. Christopher Lee is one of the coolest motherfuckers to ever walk the earth, and don't you know it?
For Christopher Lee, I've always been a big fan of his, not only from his Dracula days, but also as Count Dooku in Star Wars, along with his role in Lord of the Rings, and especially his role in Gremlins 2, which I've always found to be a lot of fun, and I've always usually gone back to, even when I was a little kid at the time. But he's one that I've always cherished, and I always light up whenever I see him in a movie. Even if it's not very good or just mediocre, his presence alone can usually bring a movie up just a little bit.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We might talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one. Music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We
Ah.
gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say
Ah. Ah.
all
Yeah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Yeah. don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen, and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
did you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one likes plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zamenhof. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zamenhof, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zamenhof, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zamenhof.
Hi, everybody. It's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything: pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.